We are at Immaculate Conception Cemetery, Beaver Creek in Knox County, just north of Crofton. The early settlers of the Beaver Creek area traveled by horse and buggy 4 to 6 miles east to attend Mass at St. Boniface in Menominee. About 1890, a small chapel was built about 1/2 mile east of this cemetery. The 18 families of Beaver Creek were at first a mission of Menominee. Then, in 1898, land was donated for this cemetery and for the building of a rectory and church just north of the cemetery site. The first burial here was Cecilia Mader in 1900. Immaculate Conception Church was completed in 1903, and then Beaver Creek was given a resident priest up until the early 1930s, when at that time it again became a mission of Menominee. When the parish was closed in 1936, parishioners joined either St. Boniface in Menominee or St. Rose in Crofton. This is the grave of Francis and Rosala Jansen. Francis was the first baby to be baptized at Immaculate Conception Church in 1911, and his marriage to Rosala Bushcamp was also the last wedding there in 1936. A year prior to Rosala's death, she provided some of her memories of the Beaver Creek Parish to be included in the 2008 St. Rose of Lima Centennial Book. Much of this information comes from her. Rosala recalled that at Immaculate Conception Church, all of the women sat on the south side and all of the men were on the north. And this may have started because originally there was not enough benches for everyone, and so the men stood on one side and allowed the women and children to have the seats. After 1936, when people no longer used the church for Mass, people still came to the church for devotional prayers. During the dry years of the 1930s, the community began the practice of meeting at the church on Monday evenings to pray for rain. When Gavins Point Dam was constructed in the 1950s, the rectory was renovated and rented out to some of the Gavins Point Dam workers. In 1961, after the church and rectory were damaged by vandalism, it was decided to sell the buildings at auction. The church was dismantled for lumber, while the rectory was moved to be used as a home on a nearby farm. The altar with the crucifix and statues of Mary and St. John was built by parishioners in the 1920s. Then, after the church had been torn down, in 1963, parishioners erected the stone grotto behind the altar, as well as the stone pillars at the cemetery entrance. Originally, there were statues of the Immaculate Conception and St. Isidore atop the stone columns at the cemetery entrance, as well as a grove of 12 cedar trees surrounding the altar, representing the 12 apostles. Unfortunately, the statues were stolen in 1987, and the cedar trees had to be removed. Even after the church was gone, members of the community still continued to meet here at the cemetery on Mondays during the summertime for a Rosary Novena. And until recently, a Mass was celebrated at the cemetery once a year.